So GameStop now nationwide they're taking in those retro video games. They're doing it. They're going for it. And we've spoken on the past before, about 9 or 10 times, about games being shipped out to people from the huge retro game GameStop headquarters that were either totally counterfeit, swap games on the inside, what have you. Which before wasn't going to be an issue just because before the supply was going to be small. You know, you had the Alabama, Louisiana region and the New York City region that was testing this out, accepting trade-ins for most of the major retro game systems of the 80s and 90s. The only ones off the top of my head that it was not accepting was like Master System. You know, they did start accepting Saturn. So you had most of the 80s, 90s covered. But now they're going nationwide. Every store you can trade in your games. All right. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because they're not training the employees to watch out for, one, if these games even work, but two, if they are the games that the people claim they are, if they're counterfeit or what have you. So I'm bringing to attention a video. His name is John. His channel is Gaming Through the Decades. And he spoke to me on Facebook. He gave me permission to show the video. You know, on this video, is this a video or a podcast? It's fair use to show the video, but he was cool to give me permission to do whatever I want and show it in its entirety or what have you, to sort of spotlight the problem. So what John did was he brought some Genesis games, about 5 or 6, to a GameStop. He wanted to see what would happen if he brought a Musha, one of the most coveted Genesis games. Loot goes anywhere between, I don't know, $175 and $200 just for the cartridge. And so he got a $5 AliExpress special. Got the game, and he got on his nice Pat the NES Punk Flea Market Madness 2010 era spy glasses, and went to his local GameStop. Encountered the employee who explained to him the program, was very nice. And this is not going to be, I'm not going to try to bash the employee here for a few reasons I'll get into in a bit. But he gave him the stack of games. Looks like there's an Animaniacs in there, and I can't really tell the other ones besides the Musha that was identified. And he proceeded to price them out. And he said, I cannot accept most of these. They're not on the list in our system, which means they are trying to be very selective and only go for a few that they think they're going to make money on, which is fine. It's not fine, though, when those are the ones that be the most likely to be counterfeited, but we'll get into that in a second. So, rejected some, said, okay, we'll give you 28 in cash for Musha. And then, here, where's your ID so we can ring this up? Now, the idea is getting that if you're pawning anything, going to a pawn shop, or technically any retro game store is supposed to take in your ID in case they have to report theft. So technically, I'm not sure how many retro game shops do this. You're technically not, in most states, depending upon the law, you're not allowed to just take a game that's brought in and yet you buy from a customer, turn around, throw a price sticker on it, and put it on the shelf to sell. There's usually a waiting period in between. I forget what it is in California. It could be 2 weeks or a month, where it gives people time to get back stolen goods by contacting the police, asking around. Now, obviously, it's not going to happen all the time, but that's why the law exists. That's why they have to take the ID. So they know who's turning this in case something bad happens, we know who it is. Now, if they use that ID later to track back bad games coming in that were counterfeit or pieces of crap fakies, that'd be great, but they're not doing that. They're absolutely not doing that here. So there's many problems here in this scenario. The first problem is, obviously, it's a counterfeit game. Now, they are not training the employees at, the whatever, 300, 500 GameStop locations across the US to look for counterfeits. It's too intensive to do that. You have to then look for counterfeits amongst all, the 15 or so retro systems, 10 or 12, whatever it is, retro game systems that are coming in, Game Boy Advance, NES, Super Nintendo. There's no way they can train them all, because who knows how much money they're going to be making on this initiative anyway, versus GameStop selling, new games and accessories and consoles. That's how they're making their money, which raises the question, why the fuck is GameStop doing this? But whatever, that ship has freaking sailed. across the Atlantic while it's on fire at this point. The employee, I'm not going to blame. He's just doing his job. He's getting paid whatever, $10 an hour. You know, he's looking in the system for the games. He's going to give whatever the system tells him back. That's fine. Now, what's interesting, though, is that there's no way for them to test these games either. And they're not testing them necessarily back at the location, you know, the Super GameStop retro location where all these games get mailed back to before getting shipped out via online sales. Again, that's a whole other conversation. But this cartridge was bad. John crazy glued it because it got damaged in shipping. But in the back, it didn't even say Sega like all the Genesis cartridges did. It said something else. It said like 16-bit or something in a weird font. So that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But offering $28 only on a game that they could probably go back and resell for between $180 and $200 is criminally insane. It just doesn't make any sense. Just because if you go to any retro game shop, and yes, you have to count GameStop as a retro game shop, you're going to get anywhere from cash only 30 to 50%. Sometimes you get credit that's 50 to 66% or 70%. Depends upon the game and how quickly the shop thinks it can move it and if they really desire it. So $28 is percentage-wise over 200. What is that? That's 15%. 15% of the cost of what they're being reselling at. Is my math right out there? Is that 15% of 230? I think it is. I'm not great at math. I got a calculator on my phone, but why bother? I'm going to guess and be wrong so you guys can call me out on it. So that's bad. That's not encouraging people that low percentage in order to go to GameStop and give them the games. It's also not going to be encouraging for the average person with a console and 20 games wanting to just have one stop and just dump off their collection somewhere and just do it, and then have a GameStop employee say, well, we're only taking 3 of these games out of your pile of 10, so you got to go somewhere else with them. Okay, great. Now I got to either split the difference and get credit or cash for 3 here, take the rest across town to the retro game shop, mom and pop place, if it exists. So it's a waste of a trip. Why not go there in the first place, and you'll probably get more cash or credit if it's a reputable game store and does good on trade-ins, like Luna Video Games, 2 locations in San Diego. That's my plug for a sick Ian. So that doesn't bode well for this initiative, and obviously it doesn't bode well if you're accepting counterfeit games. Now John was cool. He didn't trade it in because he's an honest guy. Seems like a nice guy. Check him out. Gaming Through the Decades channel. He just wanted to see if they were going to take it, and they were going to take it. And he said, it's okay, I'll think about it, and maybe I'll go to the retro game shop. So don't support this practice. Just don't freaking do it. It's just not. It's not going to work out. You're not going to get it's only going to work out if you're going to be a scam artist. But if you're going to be a scam artist, remember, you're going to be hurting people that are going to end up getting these shitty counterfeit games. So if you can live with that, don't listen to my fucking podcast. If you're the type of person that does that, have some integrity. Don't do that, unless I guess if a million people do that, you'll put GameStop out of retro game business. I mean, that would probably happen, but I can't endorse that. I can't endorse that.